Okay.
You ready? Okay. We're gonna call this meeting to order. On the first item on the agenda is to adopt this agenda. Do I have a motion?
Amber Braun seconds.
Awesome. All those in favor of adopting the agenda, raise your hand. You want to say aye or just? Aye. Perfect. All those opposed? Next, we have the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? I second. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the third approved. Holly, did you have any public input?
There was no public input.
Okay, so we're gonna skip all the way down to new business information. So this is really exciting to have our itinerant team here that's gonna help us better understand what it is that our students are consuming and what they're seeing. So I think I'm gonna, do I need to, again, I pass it, I'm just gonna pass it off to paper.
Yep.
So, Michelle, would you like to go ahead and introduce them now?
The itinerary team?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I will actually let them introduce themselves when I have their names. Again, how about we start with you and everyone else who's here.
And when you enter, stand back in front of the table so that the video can see.
So my name is Amber Braun, and I joined the team last year, right after Thanksgiving break. In between Thanksgiving break and winter break, we put together the middle school curriculum, and then we rolled out the middle school curriculum the second half of last school year. And now we have an amazing team of 5 people, and 2 of which are right here. I think might just be outside the door, but 2 are right here, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. But these are just 2 of our amazing other 4 members that we have. And we are currently going around to all of the middle schools and all of the high schools, rolling out a comprehensive growth and development curriculum to all of our students from one end all the way to the other end of our district.
Hi, I'm Sharice Merriweather. I've been in education for 33 years and I've played many roles in education. And I literally feel like this is the most important role that I have had since I've been in education. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Eric Stubblefield. I'm really happy to be here to be a part of the team. I too have had many roles and hats in my career. We've been in Charleston in the past. This is my 4th year with my kids here in Charleston. So we're happy to be here as well. So if you need anything, just ask, share.
And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna preview to y'all how we would hold a community engagement event in our community. What we did at the beginning of this school year is we went into all 6 of our constituent districts, and we held a night where parents, stakeholders, community members could come in and view the curriculum. And what we encouraged people to do is, as they came in, this is set up like a gallery walk, all right? And so we have every activity that we do all the way from our 4th grade curriculum, moving through middle school into high school, and then even over here on this table, my friends, we have continuation of the high school curriculum. Up on the board, you can see that we've got these oversized posters that give a really nice overview of what the curriculum looks like. So in 4th grade, it's just a 2-day curriculum or 2-lesson curriculum. The first lesson is all about puberty, just the physical, emotional, and social changes of puberty and what that looks like. We do talk about hormones. We've got like a cute little article that we do with the kids that really helps to simplify what are hormones and what is taking place in the body. And then on day 2, we talk about how those changes really impact hygiene and how by maintaining good hygiene, we can feel good about the way that we look, and that's going to impact our emotions, both in our feelings to ourselves and how we treat other people. And so we've got some activities that we do here in 4th grade. Moving into 5th grade, it's almost the same thing, with the exception of we do add in some family and peer relationships. So it kind of touches into Aaron's Law, where we talk about what are okay, not okay, and confusing touches. And then we talk about who are our trusted adults, what does that look like, and being able to really advocate and speak up for yourself. Hi, come on in. Yeah, come on in. Yeah. How are you? Good. You can take a seat right in front of my friend. Yeah. And so this is pretty much the 4th and 5th grade curriculum, and then it kind of bleeds into our middle school curriculum. Over here on this board, this is where we got our 6th grade overview, 7th grade, 8th grade, and then high school is a 10-day curriculum, so that takes up 2 boards. 6th grade, a lot of nice overlap, a lot of reinforcement coming from our elementary school curriculum. We've got what is puberty, moving into hygiene and practicing good hygiene skills. Lesson 3 is when we're introducing the reproductive system. So I really do want to make sure that we understand that in 4th and 5th grade, we are not covering the private body parts. Even though we do address what is the private body part rule in that 3rd lesson of 5th grade. All right, but we are not going over the male and female reproductive system. We are not introducing that until 6th grade, day 3. All right, so it's not even at the beginning of the lesson. We've got 3 days in with them before we are introducing that material. After we introduce the reproductive system for 6th graders, we're going to move into relationships. And really, if you see, all of our curriculums kind of take that format, all right? We are highlighting what is puberty, what are these big changes that are taking place in your body. We're looking at how the reproductive system is growing and developing and maturing, and then we get into relationships. And all of our relationships are a little bit different. We're tackling what do online relationships look like, what do in-person relationships look like, identifying healthy versus unhealthy. But then not only that, pairing that up with reinforcement skills, pairing that up with advocacy skills, so our students have the ability to speak up for themselves and speak up on behalf of other people. And so as you look, we've got really fun interactive activities that get the kids up in the classroom. We all kind of have a background in PE, which makes us amazing at handling chaos in the classroom, and we love movement. You know, all the research in the world shows that when you pair movement with learning, you're going to get increased in 1, work ethic, but 2, they're going to get it more. And so all of our activities get the kids up and moving, and we absolutely love it. So I'm going to encourage y'all just to hop on up, but before you do so, I got my dad joke friend right here. Actually, Eric, you've been really running a dad joke cat lately. Mike on our team, and I'm gonna stop real quick because.
Oh, yeah. We're still rolling.
Mike. I'm gonna let my Mike introduce himself. He's also part of our team. He's incredible. He's actually at Lucy Beckham this week. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
Wow, she put me on the spot here. I better come through. Mike Phelan, health itinerant teacher. I'm at Beckham right now, but I've been basically everywhere. It's really been awesome. And I believe some of y'all, I spoke last week, last time. What does the cheese say to itself when it looks in the mirror?
No.
You look Gouda.
Ooh.
Why doesn't a cow wear a bell? Its horns don't work. Why did the turkey cross the road twice? To prove it wasn't chicken.
All right, yeah, he did it to win it. All right, so my friends, as you get up and move around, just take a look at the activities. You can always take your phone out and scan the QR codes that are on the posters. They're going to take you directly to that grade level's curriculum. And you'll also see that there's linked to what's called the parent playbook. I'm going to go over that just a little bit further into our presentation. But why don't we say maybe just 5-6 minutes? Is that okay, Holly? You think that's good? Let's just take 5-6 minutes. Y'all go ahead and hop up and just kind of peruse all of those different activities. Yeah, so it just honestly, it's just kind of flowing from one to the next. So this is starting off with like 4th and 5th grade. Okay. And
Holly, how
like I
many
said, we've got
community
all the
engagement
like, so like there, like the hygiene
events
stuff,
of
I
6 so
think one of
far?
the hygiene sheets
That's
is
that's a
4th,
lot.
5th,
We
and
did them all
even for
in
6th, as we play a little hygiene match game. And then we use that to identify where like the 4 big hygiene concerns, whether it's oily hair, acne pimples, bad breath, or body odor. And then we sort how we use those products to tackle that specific hygiene concern. But even once we get into like this healthy relationship, like this is a 6th grade activity, and moving into how trusted adults, this is something I keep on me all the time to bust out with my kids, because it's a great reminder of who are trusted adults and the fact that they follow the private body parts rule. When we get into like types of violence, that's an activity that we do with our 6th graders. So 4th and 5th is really kind of here, and then we start to bleed into like this is 6, and then this is moving into 7. We do a lot of internet online safety with our 7th graders. And then we'll start to introduce fetal development with starting in seventh grade. So once we move into seventh grade, this is when we've got like the conception organizer, we've got fetal development. And for the first time where we also introduce STIs. For eighth graders, we do what's called like an STI detective, where they are trying to crack the case, like they've been given a case to figure out who's the culprit that committed the crime. And so they go around the room and start kind of weeding out who did what and who didn't do it to find out what STI they have.
Everything.
And you can see too, like the anatomy sheets, and that's something I'll show you. There's some that are this mauve color, and then there's some that are blue, and the blue are the ones that we use with our eighth and high school groups. Whereas the mauve are a little bit more simplified, and so we use that with sixth and seventh grade as we first introduce, the reproductive system. So we're only, and it's right now, because of the number on our team, we're actually not in fourth and fifth grade. But we would like to add another person come next year, and then we can devote a male and a female to elementary school. Right now, with five, we just don't have the numbers. So fourth grade is a 2-lesson, all right? In some of our schools, like when we were coming in at the very beginning of the school year, some of them opted to try to like put both lessons into one, or we would see them in the morning and then again in the afternoon, and that's fine. It's kind of nice to have that day break because there's always like a little bit of reinforcement that you can add in, highlighting what you did the day before and then moving into some new topics and new information. And then when we move into fifth grade is only a 3-lesson curriculum, but all of high school is a 5-lesson. So we try to be there all week. And then when you move into, middle school is a 5-lesson curriculum. I accidentally said that. And then our high school curriculum is a 10-lesson on a block schedule. So for example, Lucy Beckham is skinny, 8AB day, all year long.
Right.
So we have spread them out 2, 4, 6, 8, is it 8 weeks total, or is it longer than that? 8 weeks for the whole school year. And then when we go to Wando, because they're also on skinnies, but they're everyday skinnies, we are there for a total of 4 weeks instead of just 2 weeks. But then, we just went to Saul last week and we were there for 2 weeks. Yeah. So it's just, it depends on, yes, it depends on the high school and their schedule. And so it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, of course. If you have any questions, be more than happy to answer them. Yeah, so this is what we review online. Yes.
I got you. And the parent playbook is
And I
follow-up
would guess
questions
that
that they
most
have with their
information,
person.
the average adult or parent. We don't take care of the child.
We want this.
I will,
Right.
we'll highlight that. Don't worry.
Right, yeah.
So my thinking is, since it's already in PTA,
I know. I mean,
community
have the
groups and
conversations back
organizations
to-
should be able to present opportunity
he used to always say,
for this to be presented. Churches, groups, clubs.
Yes, and we are more than willing because we had very little turnout at our community engagement events, and that's what we want. We want turnout. And so if that means that we're pairing up with organizations, by all means, we're willing to do so. Because we're not hiding anything. I've even gone back through now and hyperlinked even all the activities directly into the lesson plans because there's nothing, we want a plethora of information and resources at our parents' fingertips. And we want them to know exactly what is taking place inside.
One of the things we work on is to have you come with parents and kids together. Especially parents. Our community, parents are not just the first generation. And then big mama,
Yeah.
yeah, all of them. But a lot of this would be things they would not know that you're already dealing with.
Mhm.
And some of them, since they came up with information, the prize would help them and help their children.
Yeah.
And would also close the gap. Now, one of the problems we have is folks who are disingenuous, use what they don't know. Fighting for them, to make it appear something sinister. There's a lot of them, we have this quiet teaching because they prove it. Some intentionally done. So I think there are groups, organizations that would add you to the schedule, that way it doesn't become something extra.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I would love to be added to the schedule, because I don't want, that's where we're losing people too, is parents have enough on their plate and we don't need an extra activity to attend. We could just slide in and be a part of something that's already existing that they were planning on being here always. That would be amazing. Let's, we'll definitely brainstorm.
Reverberate.
I think they're, I think I was at South.
So they're separate.
One was on 6th.
The events being done,
I was at
Mhm.
South.
and this should be included.
Yeah.
A lot of what going through emotional, psychological, something not understanding.
Yeah.
Or not knowing what to do when they find out.
I just yeah, we're on the same page. So what we have tried to do is, as soon as a child is enrolled in health, the parents automatically get an email of a letter. And in the letter, it's the curriculum is hyperlinked. So if the student is a middle school student enrolled in health, the parent gets an email that has the, you know, quote unquote, sex ed letter, the growth and development letter, and it has a hyperlink to sixth grade curriculum, seventh grade curriculum, eighth grade curriculum, and the same thing for high school students. So the parents would receive that email, letter is attached, and in the letter it has high school curriculum. And we've gotten the letter now, translated to like 5 different languages as well. Yes, yes, and I will tell you though, like, unfortunately, the whole curriculum as a whole has not been translated. Correct, right.
So we will not translate it. We've been told through multi-language learners that that's not good for them, because a lot of times we translate it and it's not really in their language correctly. And we want them to be able to learn English.
She was talking about for parents.
Oh, parents, yes, absolutely. We have it translated in Spanish, French, Mandarin, Arabic, Portuguese.
But that's the parent letter, not so much the curriculum. Yeah.
I can only like, under 50 pages per grade.
Yeah, I've got the board code binders over here that gives an idea of what's like, I mean, we're talking about the high school curriculum itself, I think is like almost all it's already.
Is that something as a plan, something that considering?
If we feel that there's a need, like the parents would truly want it and they would be looking at it, then yeah, we absolutely would. It's not something that's. Because we had started, I think it was like last year, we did translate the entire curriculum to Spanish, and then we're not doing that anymore because it's not good for the students. Because a lot of times the translation's not correct, their language is actually broken as well. I mean, we don't know what level they were on when they came from whatever country, and so it's best just to teach them in English, but we use all the visual cues and do all those tools that the in-law services tell us to do to support that student to make sure that they have.
What about the parents who don't have email?
So we also send, so if the parent does not have email, they will receive a paper copy of the letter, which unfortunately with a paper copy of the letter, it will not obviously don't have a hyperlink. But it does have, you know, Holly's contact information, which again, you know, that either is phone or email. And so I get it, like, there are definitely barriers. We do, if the school requests, we will bring the binders with the curriculum, all of the resources to the school so that parents can come by and see it for themselves and walk over and just pick it up, right?
Kind of fix the person underscores. The whole desert we have, Wi-Fi desert, a lot of things, that they cannot, literally, none of those options work well.
We've been reading.
Just giving them the same way they are. So we need to think through,
Or.
when you say we send it to parents, like users, it's more.
Yeah.
Because a lot of parents simply, email requires connections or something. It's slightly different still themselves.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and something.
Yeah, but I will tell you, any parent that does not have an email that is attached to their account, it's sent home via a paper copy, and then we can always have that curriculum in the office. And we are definitely trying to work around, navigate the issues.
The schools that understand that they already submitted.
You know, the administrator.
Yeah, because you guys were mentioning all of that when you're in Spanish.
Yes, yes, a lot of my classes are like.
Exactly, and you might be already,
Yeah.
right, and so. They rather have someone share it with them, like it could be a meeting or something, so they can express what's going to be thought. Or like a. Or it's like a conversation. Sort of like the smelly things that actually. That will be a thing that good, yeah, translators there, and there's translators that are still like a writer boy.
I mean, we are, like I said, we are
Yeah.
open to anything, and we want to make sure that every person on our community can find it together.
Now, every parents have to do off their now, but it's great.
It's kind of like that.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. If you can make it
You're
back to your seats,
automatically opted
please.
in, you can opt out. Okay.
Let's make them aware. of options. I'll be back at get and.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any further questions for Amber or any of our itinerary teachers specifically on the gallery walk part? Awesome, so let's move on. We've already met our itinerary.
Let me ask you a question. What's the reading level of this? Sixth grade?
We try to keep it, I don't,
All of our high school books are all written on the ninth grade level.
On the ninth grade?
The health one is, yeah, so like the middle school, activities.
I want to say that it's,
Like a 500 sounds,
Yeah.
usually around fifth, sixth grade, reading level, our resources.
It's not six.
and I completely understand, and so even with some of our schools, you do have to understand, one thing is we do have to modify when we go into certain schools, like, so for example, a school that I was just at recently, we were really struggling with understanding the concept of like the STD detective, so I brought it back a little bit, and I said, all right, you know what we're gonna do, we're gonna try something else, and I backed it up to the seventh grade activity. And with that, they were extremely successful. And so they were getting reading material that was on a sixth grade level. And we did an activity that they had extreme success with. And so we get that when we're walking into a school, we understand that sometimes we've got to pivot based on class sizes, based on the demographic of our students, based on the learning level, I mean, even learning styles. And that's probably, in my opinion, one of my favorite aspects of this position is you're never going to see the same week in this position. And at the end of the day, this is all about our students, and we are giving them the tools that they need to be successful.
Can I show you an example? What-
Yeah.
So just a really quick example. So the blue is the female and male reproductive system, the texts. This is on an upper level.
Absolutely.
Whereas you'll find the same information, the different reading level earlier in. I don't see it right here, so.
Jack has.
You're under now. So this is the same anatomical terms, but you can see that the text is different to that level for the younger middle schooler. reading.
And another prime example is we were having our students, one of our learning objectives at the high school level is to be able to access reliable community resources. And we were having a group that was really having a difficult time with the concept of a trifold brochure. And so what we did was we made a bifold brochure, and then we provided them the visual. We provided them with a visual and then helped summarize what are the community resources that are in our community, and then sorted it according to different categories. And so all of these things together, and y'all, we're not perfect, all right? And that's something that we will 100% say, and we text each other all the time, like, hey, I'm struggling with this topic, or do y'all have some ideas on some different activities that we can do to help simplify or even challenge? I mean, we go into some schools where we're like, the sixth grade crew at this school does not need the hygiene lesson. I need to create an additional lesson on relationships. And that's exactly what my focus is going to be on tomorrow, is actually creating an additional activity to have in our back pocket for the schools where for that sixth grade crew, hygiene is not a big concern. And so we could spend an additional day on relationships and maybe kind of touching into Gavin's law a little bit with sextortion. All right. And so these are things that we're always kind of working out, but we're always finding, I think that that's one thing that we do really well is we're constantly thinking about ways that we can simplify material so that every student is being met where they are.
I was gonna ask, what challenges or barriers have you experienced when you go into an all African American school as opposed to a predominantly white school? Or have you noticed them?
I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I love all my schools. Like I
No,
really,
I'm not talking about.
no, and I get that.
No, I'm talking about a real issue. I'm not talking about whether you like them or not. I'm just talking about what do you experience? What have you noticed? Because that's a very important question.
Yeah,
I'm looking at that information there.
yeah,
I can tell you that, and by the way, I taught school for about 5 years before I went to medical school, long time ago. But if you go into the average black school right now, trying to teach that, you're gonna have you're gonna be missing out on a lot of people not gonna understand what you're talking about.
I completely disagree. Because I will tell you right now, we are finding that we are having huge success in our predominantly African American schools. And I think it's because they are receiving information in a way that they've never received before. We are coming into their schools and we are getting them into groups and we are up and moving and we are, encouraging them to think outside the box. We are talking about something that is very private to them and it could be uncomfortable and awkward, but we meet them where they are and we provide that safe place to explore something that impacts every single person.
That's encouraging that you meet them where they are. But I can tell you that health literacy among African American people is very, very low. That's why we see so many health disparities that we currently experience. So I'm just saying that I just want to make sure that you understand that you very well may experience some of that. And if you do experience some of that, you're going to have to pivot. You may have to step back. And yes, you will have to meet them where they are. Sometimes the student will be where you will be able to meet them. The parents will not be very, very helpful at all.
I'm gonna share a story with y'all. 2 weeks ago, I went to Stall High School. And I did a lesson with them where we made bracelets. Mike took the boys, I took the girls, and we made bracelets to learn about the menstrual cycle. All right. And it was the most incredible 90 minutes that I had with these girls. We learned all about our bodies, all about what is taking place in our menstrual cycle. What is the window of conception? What is PMS? We even talked about, things like vaginal discharge and yeast infections and how we might feel during different phases of our period. We went into contraception. I walked down to the lunchroom the next week. All right. So I did that lesson on Wednesday. I walked down to the lunchroom the following week and I saw a girl leaning across the table to her friends, holding her bracelet. And she was like, and this is when you experience PMS. Do y'all know what that is? And this is okay. I knew right then we're doing what we need to do. And they are learning. And not only that, they are having the power and the skills to now educate their peers. Like it was the most incredible opportunity. So,
I think part of what he was, and not speak for him, I speak for me. I would caution you and anyone else against the danger of grading your own report card. That's not how you find out if it works. So, and I agree with you, that sounds fantastic. But there ought to be a way for the students, parents, or the children to give feedback in a way that does not appear to challenge how well you do what you do. By that I mean, don't tell me what you think they should feel before you talk to them first. And there should be some independent way, as bias-free as possible, which is not very possible. At least attempt to say, what did the students in that room feel after it was over, in a way that does not seem to encourage them to agree that we did a great job. And one episode does not an experience make, because I'm sure for every child who did what you described, there were other children who did not. So there has to be a way for us to determine through the students how well it worked without them feeling like they have to cheer us on to keep us doing the work. I'm not suggesting that's how you would do it in that environment, but I think there has to be a better way to tell how well it worked. And it should come from the students, and I'm sure you do this because you're educators, that there must be a place that they start, there must be a place where they are, and a place where they're going. And I know you do that, but I'm saying that in that room, there will be a lot of African-American children who will never tell you how they feel. They're just not going to do it because they don't feel comfortable in that environment. You remind them too much, they won't tell you that. I'm telling you that. You remind them too much of trauma. They're not free to express how they really feel. So if you represent the source of the trauma, they'll sit there and act like, I love this, or be quiet. Then they go home and say, how do you really feel? How you bridge that gap takes work. And the work cannot be that we declare victory before we fight. And the way to do that, I think, that would be helpful is to hear the words of the trusted voices in the community that will be there after everybody's gone. When everybody leaves, then we get a chance to find out how they really feel. I'm impressed with the breadth of the subject. I think it would challenge a lot of parents' perception to know they're even being taught that in that environment. Like some parents will freak right out. But I'm not talking about that. But I want us to be careful. There must be another way to evaluate the effectiveness that does not always come from the person who's presented.
So I just want to pop in just as part of in curriculum instruction. So we have to remind ourselves too, this is the first time that we've had a team going out in the district and giving all of our children the exact same curriculum, meeting the needs of where each school is. We are collecting data before, we give them an assessment before, and then we give them assessment at the end. And you're going to see a little presentation just of the data we've collected thus far. What we're doing with that data, we haven't started with because we haven't finished collecting it. So that data is going to help us move to the next stage, which can help us bridge some of those gaps.
Yeah.
What can we pinpoint at that schools when we do leave? Who's there? They still have their health teachers, but we've got the social worker, we've got the school psychologist. There's other people that they can talk to based on what they have learned. But our goal and our parameters of this curriculum is to follow the state law and give them that information that they're required to have. What they do with that information and how they soak it in and how they feel goes beyond what we can do after we leave that program until we come back again. But this is where we are. We're just in the beginning stages of making this one of the best curriculums the state has. And we're in a good place right now. And I think that's what we need to focus on and how we can get even better.
That's pretty much what I was getting at. I wasn't criticizing you. I was just making you aware of that. There are some real barriers that you're going to have to recognize and you're going to have to deal with. Because when you look at the final outcome data, the outcome data suggest that we're not doing a good job, particularly with African American students in South Carolina.
And
Because I looked it
our
up.
Hispanic students are
Yeah.
a big
I
concern
mean, the
right
pregnancy
now.
rate among African American students is far greater than the pregnancy rate is for white students. So why is that? So there are a plethora of reasons why. It may be that they are not as well educated as you thought they were when you gave the information. Not your fault. May have been the way the information was presented. It may have been a lot of different things. That's all that I'm saying. So,
I will tell you though, it's pretty amazing when you see the light bulbs going off, like, that's how my body works. And so, yes, we have 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders that have zero clue. We have adults that have zero clue how their bodies work, all right? And so we are
absolutely.
we are doing the very best to, and that is also why even at the 6th grade level, we are hitting some learning objectives that are actually 4th grade learning objectives. At the 7th grade level, we're hitting some 5th grade learning objectives. Like, we've got to make up ground. We've got to make sure that every student has the foundation before we add on to it. And so with that, there's backpedal and we're moving forward. But man, we're hoping that in 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're starting kids off at their learning objectives. We're starting kids off at their grade level, not not in terms of, this 6th grade curriculum is at a 6th grade reading level. That's not what I'm talking about. But we're, right now, the 6th grade curriculum, we're missing a lot of 6th grade learning objectives because we're having to play catch up from not hitting it in 4th and 5th and hitting it in 6th. We're having to do the same thing in 7th. We've got kids in 7th that don't take 6th grade help. So we got to make sure that they know what's going on.
We have
with
kids in
6th
high
grade
school
that have
who
never had it.
never had help, not even in elementary school, so they come to us with nothing. And that's even harder for the high school teachers, because now they're backtracking when they're supposed to be learning this, and they haven't learned that, and that.
Well, we know that.
Yeah.
We already know that when we look at the outcome data. When you look at the number of young Black girls who get pregnant before they finish high school, it's 5 or 6 times greater. So you have to ask yourself the question, well, why is that the case if all of this information was given in such a good fashion? There are a lot of reasons why.
Well, keep
But
in
only-
mind,
the only thing-
we haven't even been out in the schools for a year,
Yeah.
so.
Listen, I'm just, well, you know what I'm
Only
doing?
10 months to
I'm
make a
just
baby.
making- I'm just saying that there are just barriers out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And it's okay to recognize that these barriers for minority kids are greater than they are for white kids. And that's why the outcome data is so overwhelmingly bad.
And we'll be able to break down our data
Yes, that's
too
all I'm
by
saying.
schools, not only by
You know,
district, by
you
school.
mentioned STDs. STDs is off the chain among the Black population of kids. Why is that the case? It's all right for us to discuss that. We gotta discuss that, because we gotta find out why and what we can do about it. That's all that I'm saying.
Mhm.
So I just want you to be aware and feel comfortable recognizing
Oh, yeah.
that there are differences.
And I will, over the summer, I went and spent time at CFC clinic. I went down to DHAC. I went down to MUSC's clinic. I went down to see, what are y'all seeing? What are the stats? Where are we in terms of STIs? What is your population? Where are they coming from? I've hit the ground running. I've reached out to Feder. I went down even when I was at Stall and checked out their daycare and tried to get as much information as I could on that. So please know that, we are trying to make sure that we are, like I've said, we're meeting our kids where they are.
Can I just ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
So I think Dr. Bell's question is so essential. I don't think we need to be defensive about it. We're trying to understand how we're doing. And I know we have a whole team of teachers and we heard from one, but didn't hear any difference in experience between Black schools and predominantly white ones. Does anyone else Can we ask for your experience?
For one thing,
I find it hard to believe there would be no differences.
one thing I can say that doesn't have color
Yeah.
would be the questions. Similarities in questions, it has no color.
But I'm not asking
No,
about
no, no,
color
I'll-
blindness, I'm asking
No, let me
what
keep
your
going, but let me-
experiences are in
Let me keep going.
predominantly black schools, if you could share with us.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest and realistic with you. Of course, you go in the facilities are different. We might have to be bringing more supplies. We might have to be dumping more. That would be number one. Number two, of course, reading, writing, arithmetic. You might have to do a little more extra work or spend a little more time. I mean, it's obvious. However, the one thing that I do mention is, of course, the question, there's no color in that. It's the same thing, the data we're trying to find. But here's another awesome thing, right? We still have one open position and other health teachers are starting to see it, right? So we would love someone of color to come in and fill that next position. But I also love the fact that I can actually go in and learn about a community and vice versa. I think that also is a conversation that's happening. It's pretty amazing.
Right, I'm really want to be specific and asking
My biggest thing would be facilities.
your
and
experience, yeah.
My experiences, I think they're walking away with something. I understand that they might not be forthcoming to my face. I think they're walking away with something. I do think the facilities, the reading, writing, arithmetic skills and the comparison, I do think that. I think, yes, of course, there's culturally things. Some things that I might say or do is completely different. I get that and I see that. But other than that,
Help me understand the facility part. What do you mean by facility?
I would
You
say,
mean lesser?
I would definitely.
Which schools?
North Charleston in particular, that'd be one. I think Stall's catching up. I'd say maybe Northwoods is an older facility. Morningside was an older facility. Then you're getting down into Baptist Hill. They do have that beautiful wing there that's been added on, but some of that. So yes, I do see that. I mean,
Well, I will say, I'm like super impressed with Stall's facilities though.
Stall's
And I
actually,
love the fact that they let the kids paint on the wall, like there's so much, that principal at Stall has been super hands-on with the kids. He knows the kids' names, he's very present in the hallways. And I do think that there is a big culture shift that's taking place at Stall, in terms of, school pride. I think that that's really big and they put in a lot of effort. Both times I've been there during Hispanic Heritage Month, and I've also now been there in February for Black History Month. And being able to see the amount of activities that school puts on for the students has been really amazing and eye-opening. But you can't say that, one African-American high population school is like another. Like an experience at Baptist Hill is gonna be completely different than your experience at Stall High School. North Charleston High
Stall does
School,
stand
completely
out.
different than, yeah.
Stall definitely stands out amongst some of the more
But
prominent.
you see,
So Jerry,
but
I-
you see,
Jeremy, I think that what you're asking is that, so my experience, I've been to military magnet, predominantly African American. And I do see a small difference. I do see a difference. I do. And it's hard to go in a few days and get the trust and gain that trust because they talk less, right? So when I go into military magnet, I try to build those relationships, and then try to get a trusting, classroom. So I've been to military magnet more than anybody. And I have built that trust and I do see the kids engaged. I do see them engaged. And that's where the kind of the group work really happens is because then when they're together, they talk more, right? So I do see a difference. I had one student, African American female, and she raised her hand and I walked over and she said, "Can I get STD if I've been raped?" And I said, "Yes." And she just started bawling. And that was just amazing because we got to pull her out and we got to take her to counselor and we got to take care of her in that aspect. But there is a difference with predominantly African American and to build those relationships takes a while. And I appreciate, Amber sending me to military magnet. I think I'm the only one that's really kind of going maybe because they know me and I'm building that trust.
We are trying to make it so that if a team member teaches at a school, we're trying to keep them at that school so they become a familiar face to the student body because this isn't awkward. This is a vulnerable, this is a private conversation that we're having with these students and we want to, and also when we're not in the classroom, we're in, we try to make our face known and we're, so That's
And I
another thing
do-
that we're
I'm
trying
sorry.
to do.
And I do work with, because the teacher, they're both African American, so we work together, we have this great relationship to where we talk before the kids come in. And we have plans, and then he interacts with the kids too, and so we're both teaching together, which does help. Does that help you at all, Jerry? Does that answer your question, Jeremy?
What I want this committee to recognize is that it's okay to recognize that cultural sensitivity plays a difference in the outcome. It's okay for us to say that, it's okay for us to acknowledge, well, if we're doing such a great job among African-American students, why then is the final data showing that more Black girls are getting pregnant when compared to white girls, if we are doing something?
Right, and I think that data's gonna show us.
And I think it's a good thing that we are collecting that data, but I just don't want us to become gun shy by not just having that discussion, because if we do that,
Right.
we won't be doing our job.
And there's a difference. Let me tell you also, is that there is, because I was at Stahl for a while, okay, so, and I got to work with them. But let me tell you something, we had to teach absence for a long time. And we're just now getting into where we can really be honest with these kids and have honest communication. And you're talking about STDs, right? Well, when we talk about STDs, the number one symptom is asymptomatic. And these kids have no idea what that was. And they have no idea that they can have an STD for a month, year, whatever, and they're spreading it. So we are making a difference. And it's gonna take time, because we can only teach abstinence for the last how many years? It's ridiculous. And so that's why this committee is so important, because
And
y'all
it's
are
gonna be
backing
years
us.
before we see those trends from
Yeah.
DHEC or from our schools with the pregnancy rates, because
So-
we're not even a year yet into what we're doing to even know that we are making a
So
difference.
speaking of that, like, this is great data on the education. I guess my question is there any organization we can partner with to get the medical outcomes? Because this could, the educational data is great, but
Like, you
is
wanna
there
see the
any
rates
proof
of
that
STDs?
actually
Yeah.
does link to the rate of pregnancy?
I would imagine, yes, that we could get with the clinics, get with DHEC, with the contact with medical, society, absolutely,
Get the information from CDC.
sure.
But
yeah.
I guess, could you get it on a
The
granular
costing.
level that it gets down to the
You can-
school?
you
and
can
to
get
show
it-
the
you can
school
get
was
it-
more important?
You can get it for South Carolina.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not you can get it from Stall as compared to
Right.
Baptist. Hill,
Probably not,
I
but
don't
we could
know.
get it for Charleston County.
Charleston County.
Yes.
yeah.
And perhaps some regions within a.
Because if a student goes to DHEC, they're not gonna record what school they go to.
Right, yeah, not.
At least narrow it down to the county.
Yes, yeah.
You can get some of that information from DHEC, because DHEC has African-American epidemiologists who track that information. You just gotta know who to ask to get it, that's all.
So that'll be something we'll definitely be
Is that
looking at as we go.
Given that we're only a year in, that would be great if we could get what is it
Sure.
in Charleston County
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
all these.
For the
rates.
principal at,
Okay, I have a question. I don't
Oh.
know, do you guys have a strategy, like after this stops, the strategy for the kids? Let's say they have questions. Do you encourage the kid to talk it out with someone, with a parent, or do you have a strategy for them to work on it together, not just with their peers, because they're like, still trying to
Sure.
figure things out?
So before we started, teaching in the schools, all of our teachers went through, a full comprehensive training on just on stuff like that. So to see the red flags, if a student asks a very specific question, what comes next? And we follow that protocol, and never singling out a child, but just to know that that child is being lifted up and being supported, whether it's through counseling or, anything that, just like the story that, Sharice just told you. So that piece, and if it's just a peer relationship, yeah, it could be a sidebar conversation, but they are all trained to know when that specific question comes up and what we do next.
Do you encourage the kids to talk to their parents?
There's that
Yeah.
trusted, we have
Yes.
several lessons on, like trusted adults, what does that mean? Who you can.
Sometimes it's
talk
not a
to
parent that's
before.
Because, yeah, or an adult,
Yes,
any
yes,
adult
right.
cannot give the right
Yes.
guidance.
Yeah.
you know.
Right,
Yeah.
so we.
And that
we have to
starts
talk
in
about
fourth
that.
grade, and it goes all the way.
And we do, starting in sixth grade, do an activity with the students where we talk about choosing to disclose and what that would look like. And then also if someone chose to disclose to them, how to handle that situation. That's a repeated theme that goes on from sixth grade all the way through high school. Also though, and we're kind of in the process of revamping this, but every curriculum, every grade level has a take-home activity, and the whole purpose of the take-home activity, and we've had some parents that have, we've had some miscommunication and some misunderstandings, and so this is something that we need to do a better job of communicating to, but this is an awkward conversation to have, and we want to help kind of break down any barriers so that they can have an open line of communication with whatever trusted adult that is at home when it comes to their reproductive health care. And so every grade level has at least one take-home activity where, you know, even in the beginning where it's fourth, fifth, sixth grade, it's like interviewing their parent on, well, what was puberty like for you? And just hoping to kind of get their foot in the door and have that conversation. You know, moving a little bit more into seventh, eighth, and high school. Eighth grade's got a couple different take home, like even if like examining violent situations and like, okay, so if I found myself in this violent situation, mom or dad or, you know, grandma, you know, what do you think I should do in this situation? So, and then we also have questions regarding, you know, who are our trusted adults and what are their contacts information and why would I need a trusted adult in certain situations? So we want to give kids an opportunity to take questions home to their parents and caregivers in the hopes of opening up, cracking that door so that in the future, if they had some more questions, they know that that line of communication is open with that guardian.
Not just a school official.
Also, we do anonymous question box too. So at the end of every lesson, if a kid has a question, every kid's gonna be writing no matter what, because it'll say like, share with me your dream vacation if you don't have a question. So we're not trying to single anybody out in the classroom that's writing, because then they'll be like, oh, look, he's writing, like he said a question, right? So everybody in the room is writing, whether they're sharing with me whatever question it is on the board, or they're actually writing a question, and they'll drop their paper as like an exit ticket before they leave. And just like Mike said earlier, it's wild because you can almost like, day one, there, you know, we're getting questions about STIs. Day two, we're getting questions about babies. You know, it's, you know, where we are, it's the questions are very similar and they typically, we can categorize them into like 2-3 categories across the board. So that's another way that students are able to ask questions in a safe way, especially if they do not feel comfortable enough to ask them in front of their peers. Basically.
Yeah. So I guess this is just a conversation about how as committee we bring action. And just to bring it back your thoughts too, since we are recognizing that there will be schools that are different, and you did say, Amber, that there's schools that you know where say hygiene is not an issue, right? And other schools where there are. So we're recognizing that schools demographics are going to be different. And I had a sort of a conversation with some of you as far as it can be as simple as accessing hygiene products or
Yes.
period products. And we know that you all have only been doing this for a year. So how do we bring our committee into action so that as time goes by, specific schools, specific communities get maybe a list of specific resources where kids can get, if hygiene is an issue because there's no soap, like detergent account, like we were looking at that image, or period supplies, or if there's not a trusted adult and I think I have an STI and I live with an older brother who works all day and there's no parent or the grandparent and is sick, or I mean, there's a, right? And it's going to vary in every school and demographic. So how do we you know, sort of make that
That's a really
connection?
good question, right? Because as a community, you know, curriculum is the forefront and your most concern, but we also want to do outreach. So whenever the committee comes to discussion or has ideas or wants to put something in place, we put that into a board brief and take that to the board of trustees. And this becomes the recommendation from the health advisory committee that we suggest that would help us based on what we're seeing. So what you're seeing today would be something similar to what we will probably present in May or June to the board when all of our data is together, once we finish the whole year, because we want to show the board of trustees as well. This is what we did this year, this is what our data looks like, and this is what our plan is going forward. So that plan of going forward would include your recommendations from the Health Advisory Committee of what you would like to see continue. And then when we do find something that wants to actually be put into action, we would vote on that and then ask the board of trustees to approve it. And then the shall take it.
And I do have a question that's very specific to the experience you shared when you were making bracelets, which sounds great. But I can't imagine, is it Mike?
Yes.
So do you also, like, how does that conversation happen with girls when it's somebody else in here?
So on that particular day.
Well, no, to me, and that's
But
the
it's
point
actually an issue that we have.
that I've actually encountered.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's been, we all were gonna provide activity grade levels that we like, and I was actually very interested because I have children in fourth and kindergarten, fourth grade, and I was really excited to be their teacher. I mean, I was gonna teach basketball and this, but another subject for their time, but, it was a real big problem with having a man come in and look, we weren't getting in the full depth of fourth and fifth grade, it was maybe hygiene products and what it is, or menstruation. And there was a big problem with the fact that the man was doing it. They had no problem with female doing it, whether it was female with girls and guys, but the male still strictly on. And I think getting back to the community, I think that is huge. I mean, you're tasking us with looking at data, and I mean, you open my eyes to a lot of things, like, yeah, folks know whatever they want to hear, right? But then my task back to you all, everyone stated, the one thing also that showed no color, but was similar across the board, every community engagement night, there was no parent involvement. None, no parent involvement, like the Mount Pleasant, back to sales, and workshops and stuff like that. So we would task you all, as well as us, to get into the community and say, hey, you're going to checking out that community night. You're going to, it's just like going to vote. You want to check that out? We need to change this. We need to be getting your seeing what's up. So then the parents, we can have a question box for parents and they can say, hey, my kid brought this, or hey, this was happening here. Maybe we can touch upon this and add it.
And the committee also could, to address that question, it's the number of teachers we have and the number of students. So if we could increase our funding where we can get 8 to 10 of our teachers, we can guarantee that we can send a male and a female to every school where the females only teaching the females and the males only teaching the males. And it does, it does make a difference. It does, it makes a huge difference.
Well, I would
We
even,
don't have the capacity.
I would even go further than that. What about the diversity of the people who give the information?
That too. And
That's
that,
very, that's very, very
we would
important.
love to have more diversity, but when the postings go out, nobody's applying.
But that's
so-
another issue, but
Right,
but for us to acknowledge that that's a major barrier.
sure, absolutely.
A kid is gonna take, we already know this in medicine, a kid is going to be more inclined to take information from someone who looks like him, or from someone who comes from the same environment as he is.
Absolutely. And we don't have diversity on our team right now. You can
Right.
see that. So how we're, like she
that's-
said, we're trying to send the
Oh,
teachers to the
that's
same
not,
school.
that's not a put down. That's just, I just want, I just get the feeling that people think that that's a put down. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
So what we're
And that's
doing,
what the
that's,
di-
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
what
nothing
the,
we can do, but we can send Sharice to military man every time, so she becomes a familiar face to them, and that's.
you know,
the only way we can
let
develop
me
it.
ask you another question, and I really don't know that. In the rural schools, what rural schools do y'all cover?
All of them.
Okay, so have you noticed the significant barriers in the rural schools as opposed to the urban schools?
Yes, yes, absolutely. When I go to Baptist Hill, every time, I have to make sure that I have paper copies for everything, because I know that I'm probably not gonna have working internet.
Right, okay.
You know, when
Which is
when
really,
we go to certain schools, we know that we are gonna have to bring extra paper and pencils and crayons and provide all of the material, which is fine, you know, but it does. You know, we've got schools
And
that
it's a
have a
different
plethora and we have a.
There's
we have schools
also,
that do
you
not.
know, you have to go in with a different mindset from our urban schools to rural, because the behavior is different.
Oh, without a doubt.
Too. Their language and how they treat each other and how they treat, you know, the adults in their.
But the Wi-Fi access shouldn't be a problem
It shouldn't be, but
in Charleston County.
it should not.
So we should,
There was a Chromebook issue as well.
should make that,
Some of the schools,
If the wind blows from a southeast direction, we are in trouble. I mean, I don't know, like, you know, one day, and it'll be beautiful outside, and so it.
so
it
Mount
is-
Pleasant has Wi-Fi?
Yeah, there's
You know, it's not all the time. Not all the time, you know, and right now, Stall High School has a weekly fire drill because they can't figure out how to turn the fire alarm off, like. So, you know, every school has its barriers, even our, you know, even our white schools, but,
Like, we were
They-
just, SOA, and we didn't have a classroom. We had a classroom in every school, in the SOA, we had to use a gym. So that's even a barrier too, so yeah, we're seeing
we're
all
always, we don't know, we obviously reach out to the teachers a week to 2 weeks in advance. And we try to get a pretty good idea of, you know, what is the situation that we're coming into. You know, when it comes to the middle school, I've been really fortunate because when I did the little half, you know, when I did that one semester, I almost went to every middle school by myself, last school year. And so talk about eye-opening, right? My world was Wando High School for a really long time. And now I'm way outside my comfort zone. One, I never thought I'd teach middle school. So, but also, I'll say pleasant surprise, I love middle schoolers, they're so great. But I mean, seeing the vast diversity, and that's another reason why though, I went right back to the drawing board over the summer and revamped almost the entire middle school curriculum from last school year, because it was not fitting the bill. And guess what? This summer, I know that I'm gonna sit back and I'll be making changes again. This is not a static thing. This is ever evolving. Even in just the last 2-3 weeks, we've come up with at least 3-4 new activities. And we're just constantly trying to just add options. And that's the thing. I think that's another thing that we do realize. And maybe I don't realize I'm doing it because I just know that I'm walking into a school and I need to meet my students where they are. And so when that day's topic is puberty, I've got a lot of options in the back of my pocket. For example, I made a puberty scavenger hunt where my target population is 6th graders. Mike pulled out to Baptist Hill High School and he did it day 1 with the high school group. And they did fantastic because it was on their level and they enjoyed it and they got a lot from it. And so we just got to keep options in the back of our pocket so that we can meet the needs of our students while staying in the scope of law, staying in the standards and operating in the lanes of the learning objectives.
what's the mindset of the school board? Are they open to changing progressive ideas?
Well, this is our second meeting, and anybody here from the school board? So that would be my thing. I want to just go back here. This position alone, I've been in coach for 13 years. I've only worked in Title I. This position alone, blowing my mind, for the difference of 5 to 7 miles. It is, I'm with you, with what you're saying, bringing up 5 to 7 miles.
Which schools are doing better? Which one?
The ones that I most notably I worked in California in Title I school, but here working in Title I school, I was in North Charleston at the CCSD. Okay, so, which I really enjoyed and finding food and walking across and so, but a difference of 5-mile ride and 1 or 2 bridges, it is absolutely vital. And I agree, and all I can say is I agree with what you're saying. I totally agree with what you're saying.
So we have our own challenge.
So I think it's, yeah, the school board, I think some of them really embrace what we're doing. We're gonna split it, right? But the other ones do not embrace it and we're worried and scared, so, you know.
And you know,
So y'all are important.
one of the things that we did before we
at the last meeting, I went back and I read the minutes. We recommended that the group that spoke to us on the topics, they were professional. They were non-biased. They represented what the school thought was on that particular subject, so they are going to present to the school board. Now, is the school board likely to accept what they say, or are they likely to reject it?
Let's put it in context. Half of the committee was fired by the school board.
Those ladies I thought were the ones.
And those, and
They
then
were.
some of us got on,
Had the amazing data.
you got on the same way I got on. The daughter reached down and said, I want him on board.
Like, I'm sure there's people that see that. They did watch and they watched the week of it. They've done their work behind it, knowing that they should. I think right now, we just keep moving forward.
Okay.
And we'll keep making recommendations. I'm not trying to rush us along, but it is 10 after 6. And we do have custodians who are waiting to clean this room and they can't leave till we're done. And I want to expect everybody's time. We typically go an hour. But I want Eric, if y'all are okay, Amber was going to model a lesson for y'all during the activity. We can still do that, but I think it would be good for Eric to present the data that we have so far. And then maybe next time we can model a lesson, but the whole goal of tonight was for the team to show you everything that the kids had. And I think what you saw, you see it hands-on, pretty in-depth. Before we go, I know we have limited time, but go back to what we're in versus where kids are. You need to have a real approach. Give them a couple of things to think about it. Once you guys are gone, have them tell their teachers anonymously what they thought about the lesson. And then that if that's you, so yes, you may not go back to that school that like during the year, but that's the things that they see and notice can be applicable to everyone. And I mean, I think also like in terms of like who's like not comfortable with saying that in person out loud, but that's they may think that you want to thought about to say, and I think that's important for that too. And I also just want to acknowledge that last year was always the community was always one time and so like it's so important for the learning that we talked about.
All right, so maybe, I'm gonna go through some data and give you some of our, my information, where it comes from, how we think about that kind of stuff. But to address what you said, really quick, I think that's very important. Actually, I wrote some notes on here that's like, hey, how can students give us feedback with how they feel? After a week or two later, so. Correct, and not just a curriculum, so that's part of my background. I have a doctorate in educational leadership, did a lot of work in data and assessments and how to do survey research methods and things like that. So I was already sitting there thinking and trying to, okay, stop thinking about this and focus on what they're saying, because I was already going down a rabbit hole thinking, how can we get good data from students and teachers to make what we're doing better, to give us some feedback to say, what do we need to adjust? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So as of February 13th, that's earlier this week, go ahead. We have approximately, once we got our system going and doing and how, into schools and got a routine, we've collected about 3,000 surveys at the beginning prior to any lessons. And we've collected about 1,800 post surveys afterwards. There's been some very minor adjustments because there's that balance between the more you change, then the harder it is to compare between, say, fall and spring or different things. And we have a lot of conflicting schedules and things in terms of if you're taking our instruction year round, so you took the pre and the fall, but you're not going to take the post test in the spring. So there's a lot of stuff. So just quickly overall, our biggest overview, the biggest thing that stands out is that there's the largest growth before and after instruction is with STD and STI information and prevention. So we take several questions of our survey and say this one, this one, this one, that one has to do with STDs. Literally just pull them together and say, as a group, what kind of percent correct did we get in the beginning before instruction and after? It's kind of oversimplified, but it's what we needed to begin with. So we're noticing that, so that's a good thing. Notice, this is not achievement, this is growth. So it could be, hey, we got 20% of the questions correct, and we went up to 50%. Now, 50% is not an acceptable number, but wow, look at the growth. So that's what we look at first. Because remember, we're kind of reestablishing the line of instruction. So we're teaching anatomy and puberty, for example, to 6th, 7th, 8th, and high school, when it really should be more younger. Does that make sense? Something that Scott said earlier about that. So the second largest growth between the P and the post was the area of anatomy and physiology. So part of what we learn about with our puberty and anatomy is that you got to know what you have in order to address the health of those items. Now, this is not super in depth. You guys, I think, saw there. We're talking about basically how does the reproductive system work in terms of traveling the path of sperm, the journey of sperm, and the menstrual cycle and pregnancy. Very simple things, but we saw the second largest growth there. So particularly about changes during puberty, what we see a lot of, most of our growth in that area is with our 6th grade, and that fortunately or unfortunately, that's kind of some of the students' first exposure to this kind of information. And the kind of information is, hey, there are 3 different types of changes. There's physical, there's social, and emotional. You'll see a cognitive change kind of be introduced over the next few times. So we're very familiar, and adults too, very familiar with some of the physical changes, more on our own bodies than necessarily the opposite sex. But we're a little fuzzy on the social and emotional things that happen. So for example, peer pressure increasing, that would be a social change that happens during puberty. So there you are. Now, 7th, 8th, and high school, what we noticed is, hey, they're starting out much higher and not improving very much. But because they're going from 75, 80% correct to 90% correct, it doesn't look like they're growing much. Whereas these are starting, say, 50 and ending up at 75. So in other words, 7th, 8th, and high school, when they have received a little bit of instruction about puberty changes, they're keeping most of it. That's a very good thing.
And in 3 years, when we're still giving the survey and our 6th graders now get to 9th graders, if they're all at the 90%, we know we did our job 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Exactly.
Because they've already got it. And that's going to be something that's really going to be beneficial, that data in 3-4 years down the road.
Exactly. And that's something that I mentioned a little bit later that you'll see is that, so we may want to back off just a little on the time we spend on the 6th, 7th, and 8th. We don't have to spend as much time doing it because they're retaining it, and we can spend more time with the other important factors as well. Now, STD info and prevention, one of the growths that we have. So it's not in the 6th grade curriculum, the STD, STI part. So we don't teach it. If it's not in the state curriculum, we're not teaching it. As important as it may be, that's a fact because that's the job. However, what we're seeing with our, now this is approximates, 7th, 8th high school, pre versus post survey. And I'm sorry, I'm saying it right now. You're seeing some scores about knowledge about STDs, STIs, somewhere around 20, 30%. And then at the end, they're closer 50, 60, 65%. Again, not where we want them to be, but as this is kind of their first introduction for some students, we think that that's that growth. We want to note that and say, hey, this is something we're looking at.
When you say growth, what do you mean?
The difference between if you answered the question before instruction, when I first came into the room,
Okay.
versus at the end of instruction.
I got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you missed the
Okay,
first.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah. The other thing is part of our survey, we do have some open-ended questions. The benefit of that is you can get a lot of information from that. The problem with that, it's not super easy to classify and to take that qualitative data and put it in quantitative data. So some tends to be hard to understand. So overall, this is what I'm going to say. The open-ended type questions. All right, basically what we're seeing is we want to see more accurate and more complete answers from the beginning to the end. And a lot of the answers in the beginning are IDK. I don't know. And that's okay. We just say, write what you know. By the end, that IDK comes up to 1 or 2 words. Some students have 1 or 2 words at the beginning, and that becomes fully fleshed ideas. Or maybe they can think of, instead of, these are some of the questions that are in those open-ended for, you know, the upper grades. Some risk associated with sexual activity. They might say pregnancy. Well, great. Well, by the end of instruction, they say pregnancy, but they also say STDs, STIs, and then they may even bring in some of the social aspects of it, with trouble with relationships or this. There's other things too. Best method of getting and preventing STDs, what is abstinence, and identifying a benefit to abstinence, because that's still, you know, whether that's the student's choice or not, the fact is that abstinence is the only 100% effective pregnancy prevention and STI, STD prevention. That's a fact. Everything else, we can go from high risk to low risk, but that's an important piece of our curriculum. So these open-ended questions, we do see some benefits, some growth. Not with everybody, but with most. So in the future, some of the things we're throwing around to try to say, how can we adjust to get things better and more effective? So we talked about less puberty change instruction, because we see that they're starting high and ending high. Better defining primary versus secondary sex characteristics in puberty. That's something that's in our curriculum. Primary sex characteristics, of course, are the things that relate directly to childbearing and the genitals, whereas the secondary sex characteristics are the things under the physical changes like hair growth and voice changes, other physical things. So kind of getting maybe approaching that a different way, so the students are getting it. Understanding conception and fertilization, both of those terms are used in our curriculum, making sure that they understand that. General vocabulary about anatomy, healthy and unhealthy relationships, characteristics of those things, and health during pregnancy. So these are things that right now we're thinking, as we make adjustments, these are the things that we want to tweak to make better. You have all this printed
Yes,
from this,
everybody has
so I
this.
don't need to walk you through exactly all these different ones, but I do want to show you this. So all this is, I took all those answers and split them up by grades and did some, you know, spreadsheety stuff, and basically came up with, like I said, question 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12, and 13 all come together and comes up with, okay, here's our overall average. Now, I weighted each of the questions equally. So puberty and hygiene might have 10 questions, whereas decision-making and safety might have 3. Okay, so with that, but generally you can see the simple calculations. I'm not doing regression studies and correlations and things like that. Simply, as a big group, 6th graders, 60% to 71%, 10% growth in terms of puberty and hygiene questions. Anatomy, physiology, a growth. Remember, we're not doing STD, STIs in 6th grade. But then decision-making and safety, we've moved up. Now, these are fairly modest. The charts are simply just a visual representation of these numbers here. So we're looking the blue, the pre, the red post, and the difference in yellow. Can you go to the next one, please?
I did.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Perfect. So what I'd like to see, I'd love to see them up here, blue and red. But if I don't have that, I'd want to see blue and red to see the big change that what we're doing is making a difference. You can look at the other, basically it's 6th, 7th, 8th, and high school. Go ahead and flip through one more time. Notice the STD, STI info and prevention for high school. I was chewing on my tongue over here when you're talking about the STD, STI rates, bloodborne pathogens in our community, pregnancy. This right here, I think says a lot. Now, some of us, I'm just going to do what I want to do no matter what the risks are, but this is a pretty big difference in awareness and risk for our high school students who are taking this. And we're talking about high school students. Most of them are freshmen. There's a few smattering of sophomores and a couple here or there. So hopefully we'll see some differences over time. But that informs my decision of, okay, this is what we're doing and it's being effective. You remember going back to the puberty? Okay, let's spend a little less time with it. That's because, look, they're already pretty high and they're staying pretty high. I'd love to see 100% on everything, but generally about 80, I'm happy with.
And half of the high school students now had Amber last year,
Yeah.
only
okay,
half of them.
Listen, close your ears. I'm telling you, being in school, being at Burke, being at West Ashley, being at some middle schools that I could sit there in the classroom and this kid, this kid, this kid's answering all the questions. Those three had Amber Braun last spring in the previous grade. They really do come with some information. And so I wouldn't make a note of it, except for it's a marked difference. And it also skews our data, which makes me really unhappy. Like, you already know the answers. I don't want you to take my pretest. I want you to just be on the end, right? Okay, so just to address some of this stuff. So there's always some errors, and I'm not running, like I said, I'm not running the statistics that I could with it. I'm estimating based on my personal experience teaching in the middle and the high schools this year. I'd estimate you can take a grain of salt about the size of a 5% up or down in any of these numbers, roughly. Why? I don't have the numbers on that. What I do have is eyeballing and watching our students' effort and participation. Some of them are going through and just go because they have test fatigue. They're just so tired of taking tests. Like they just see that as,
Or they can't comprehend the questions.
or, well, that's it. You know, we do talk about that. We do address, and again, that comes with some of our wording. Some of it is, hey, they're absent and they never get around to coming back and getting that test at the end because we're not there asking the teacher, hey, can you make sure that student does this test and keeping it up? Yes, sir.
Pardon me, I gotta go and I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. Next meeting is going to be here or you don't know?
I don't know yet, most likely here, and I would say this is typically where we would always meet unless they feel we need to be in the boardroom. They didn't feel that we needed to be, which obviously was correct. So yes, I believe it's set for April. And then we would have our fourth one in May, but
You have a
that's,
date yet, Nick?
I do have it, I don't know, it's always the third Thursday of the month, 18th, yeah,
Karen, thank you.
Sorry.
thank you. And
Yeah. So the other little bit is, growing pains in terms of our surveys. We do have provide QR code, you can scan it and take it, but using the Chromebooks in particular, what we found is there's some mistakes, like they start typing in and they get it mixed up. So I try to clean that data up. And obviously, here's the thing, every school is different. There's different schedules. This one's on 45-minute skinnies. This one's on block. This one meets AB day. That one only has health one day every month over the year. This other one, they group them like this. This other one, they group them like, everybody seems to be different. And because of that, it's kind of hard to nail down some things. I don't know what else I have after that.
that's it, so well,
Yes.
yeah.
What does 100% represent? Like, is there a nationwide standard for health literacy?
Oh, I see what you mean. So the percentage that we use strictly it's what's the percent of students who got the question that was asked correct? And there are different forms of questions. So there's not a standard in terms of, hey, at this level, this type of question should be answered at 70%. That's from 20-some years of teaching and saying, hey, I want to get A, that's something would be great for everybody to be there.
And these are questions that we generated on our own as a team, but not coming from another.
Right, we're not
company.
using an outside survey. We're saying
Just
this
for
is our
what we know we're
curriculum.
Teaching and what we are, and what we want them to learn.
Yes, we're teaching this, so we want to know how they're doing on this thing.
Yep.
So if anybody has any questions, you go to Ms. Gunn, you can contact me.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment that I'll just make you aware of. About 2 or 3 months ago, we were seeing so much STDs in high schools. We ran out of medications to treat.
I believe it.
And syphilis is on the rise, among young people.
Right now, talking down.
And we are beginning to see more HIV, the African American community, they kind of pushed that in the background, but now it's beginning to creep up again. So I think those kinds of things, that's just the way it is. Those kinds of things we're going to have to, address.
What I'm hoping to do is say, if we track what we're doing over the next, say, 3 years, then hopefully that high school class that starts out at 19%.
And that thing that you showed about unhealthy relationships,
Yes, sir.
that's very, very high in the African American community.
Well, and one of the things that we can do with the data is we can separate it by school and compare the
Yeah.
schools, and we can target those services that
Yeah.
know that those outreach programs that in our support services, wraparound services that we have at CCSD, can like, hey, y'all need to get over there, because this is what our data is showing. But yeah, so that was everything in a nutshell. And going forward into the next meetings, if you want something on the agenda to talk about that pertains to this, you need to let Michelle know, and we'll put that on there. And typically, when the minutes are generated back, we'll create a board brief, and the board of trustees knows that we talked, all the topics that we talked about, and just an overview.
Are we able to get Eric's email address? Should we have questions about data after we?
It's in here.
Oh,
Yeah. get it on there.
okay.
Are we encouraged to come to the big board meetings?
I will encourage you to come to the big board.
Really?
Be there.
They're lengthy.
They're very long.
They're very lengthy. Bring snacks.
Yeah. Be there early if you want to get into the room.
And if you want to speak.
And look at the agenda first to see what's going on, so you know what the topics are.
So did we get a chance to get feedback from the health committee? Our feedback is just our personal.
So our feedback, our board brief goes to, it's just on paper, and if they want us to come and have a conversation, then they will invite us.
Yeah, but
But usually, unless it's an action item, like we're voting on something, like a policy change in our bylaws, or we're voting on a curriculum, then yes, we will be there and they will have a conversation with us. And because they ultimately have to approve any action item that we approve in this committee.
I tell you something that I've been doing, I'm on radio and television a lot. So I've been talking about sexually transmitted diseases among African Americans in high school in South Carolina, not just Charleston. And it's really kind of interesting because it's bad throughout the entire state, as well as the number of pregnancies that we are seeing among African American young girls. It's 3 to 4 times higher than Black kids. So you always have to ask yourself the question, well, why is that the case? And there are a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I've been trying to do is to educate, using my own platform, the Black community particularly, because most of all of my tips are on the urban radio stations. And I have been getting some very interesting comments from people who are saying, wow, I had no idea, that was the case. So if you hear me talking about something on radio or television, I'm giving just my personal views. But it's really kind of interesting because I've been on radio, television now for 21 years doing Closing the Gap in Healthcare. And never have I gotten someone challenging me on the information. You may not like the information, but the information is always accurate. Yeah. So I'm just putting that out there in case you hear it.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any other business. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry, I know,
I am
I think Bonnie mentioned at the last meeting that for those of you that were on the board last year, questions was, there was discussion of expanding this for children with learning disabilities or
Yes,
developmental
yes.
delays. That's something we're gonna talk about in the coming weeks.
Yes, so it's going to be a lot of work to do that. And so we want to make sure we get all our ducks in a row with this first for a full year before we circle back to making sure that we're reaching our kids with disabilities, but absolutely, yes.
Will we hear more about our questions for the next meeting? Like, is that something you guys talk about and you come back with more information? Like, for instance, that was proposing
yes.
maybe having the
Yeah.
translated.
Yes,
for
yes,
the
but we will
Hispanic
bring those back to the forefront, yeah.
Speaking of the Hispanic community, let me ask you a question, because I've had, one of the issues that I found out in the Hispanic community, there's different kinds of dialects
Mhm.
in the various communities. Took me a little while to find that out. Okay. So how do you get around that?
Well, they do have it, but they do understand the main language, the Spanish language.
They do.
They do. Parents, they do have a harder time, but they do understand it.
I can give you some,
Yeah.
so I'm from Guatemala,
Okay.
so we have about 22 plus different languages and dialects throughout the country. And so I would disagree with that because people can be so remote from the city that they don't necessarily know how to read and write and understand Spanish. So it is a huge barrier for some Hispanic communities.
I'll tell you why I found that out.
Yeah.
So in closing the gap in healthcare, we were trying to reach the Hispanic community, so I hired this lady to translate. So one friend of mine called me up and said, "We understand the things she said because she wasn't talking in our dialect." And I said, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, they're their main language.
I said, "Oh my God."
It's a, I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
That's another topic.
Yeah.
For the respect of.
Yes.
Custodian, yeah. Yeah, it's a whole, we need a motion before y'all can leave.
Oh, yeah, I motion, Amber Brown.
I'll second.
Oh.
Awesome. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you. Any opposed?
I was gonna ask about, what activities. I don't know them.
Okay, maybe come back.
I'll be back.